Hey friends, welcome back to the Elevated Dose. Before we get into this episode, I want to slow us down for just a second because today's conversation deserves that kind of care. I'm sharing lived experience, pattern recognition, and what I've learned walking this road in my own body. I'm not a doctor. This isn't medical advice, and nothing here replaces your relationship with your provider. What this is truth from inside the long game. Today's episode is one I've been circling for a while because it's not flashy, it's not beginner friendly, and it doesn't come with a checklist. But if you've been on a GLP-1 for a while, you're going to feel seen. This isn't a phase, the long game of GLP-1 care. I want to start by saying something out loud that a lot of people are carrying quietly. If you did everything right, if the medication worked, if your labs improved, if your body stabilized, and you're still tired, you didn't miss a step. What you're feeling makes sense because no one really prepares you for what happens after the mental noise quiets. No one talks about the emotional shift that happens when something finally works and you realize it isn't temporary. It isn't a reset. It isn't a season. It's care, ongoing care, chronic care. And that realization lands differently than people expect. When most people talk about GLP-1s, online, in the media, and even in doctors' offices, they talk about the beginning, the dramatic part, the before and after, the early relief, the moment food noise quiets and your brain feels calm for the first time in your life. The beginning is loud. The beginning gets attention. The beginning feels like a miracle. And don't get me wrong, it is meaningful. For so many of us, it's the first time our effort actually matches the outcome. The first time our bodies respond instead of resist. The first time we stop blaming ourselves. But here's what no one really says. Beginnings are fueled by adrenaline. Long-term care is fueled by endurance. And those are very different energy systems. Eventually, the novelty wears off. The scale slows. The big reactions from other people fade. Your routines become normal. Your labs quietly improve in the background of your life. You're still doing the work. You're still making intentional choices. You're still managing a body that needs support. But the applause stops. The progress didn't stop. The applause did. And that moment right there is where journey fatigue usually begins. Not because something is wrong, not because you regret starting, not because it didn't work, but because the work became invisible. Journey fatigue is one of the most misunderstood parts of long-term GLP-1 care. It isn't burnout in the traditional sense. It isn't a lack of motivation, and it definitely isn't ingratitude. Journey fatigue is the mental load of always being aware. It's decision fatigue. Protein, hydration, timing, refills, movement, side effects, travel, access. It's identity fatigue. Living in a body that requires intention in a world that celebrates effortlessness. It's chronic awareness, never fully forgetting that your health is something you manage, not something you set and forget. And the reason journey fatigue blindsides people is because it shows up after we start to see success, after stability, after relief. When your nervous system finally realizes, oh, this is real. This is ongoing. There's also grief here, and we need to name that. Grief for the fantasy that one day you'd be done. Grief for the idea that you'd graduate from needing support. Grief for the years you spent struggling without access to tools that actually worked. Even when you're grateful, even when you choose this all over again, you can hold relief and grief at the same time. And pretending you can't only makes the fatigue louder. I want to take a minute to talk about something that comes up constantly in this community: access. Because education is important, but access is what actually changes lives. If you're exploring GLP-1 care, or you're already on this path and need a provider that understands long-term support, not just a quick prescription, I recommend checking out Fridays. Fridays is a telehealth platform focused on obesity care. They offer GLP-1 medications, ongoing provider support, and a model that actually understands this isn't a phase, it's life. What I appreciate most is that Fridays doesn't treat this like a 12-week program or a cosmetic fix. They understand maintenance, chronic care, and the realities of staying on track long term. If you're curious, you can learn more or get started at joinfridays.com, and you can use my code DOSE to save on your first month. As always, talk with your own provider and make the decision that's right for you. But if access has been a barrier, Fridays is a solid place to start. There's a moment I hear people describe over and over again. It sounds like, I thought I'd be done, that I'd stop thinking about it. But instead, there's a quiet understanding. This is something I will tend to, not obsess over, not white knuckle, but tend to. And that's where the grief sneaks in. We need to talk about maintenance for a minute because maintenance anxiety and journey fatigue are roommates, living right at the center of this conversation. Maintenance is often framed as the finish line, the easy part, the moment you finally relax. But maintenance isn't passive. It's not set it and forget it. It's not freedom from the effort, but it is freedom from the chaos. Maintenance is active care without adrenaline. There's no rush, no dramatic wins, no dopamine feedback loop telling you you're doing a good job. It requires trust instead of urgency, consistency instead of intensity, patience instead of pressure. And if you've spent your entire life fighting your body, that shift can be terrifying. So if maintenance feels harder than weight loss, you're not broken. You're learning how to live without being in survival mode. One of the most invalidating things people hear on this journey is, but it worked. Be grateful. Gratitude does not cancel exhaustion. Gratitude does not erase mental load. Gratitude does not make chronic care feel light. You can be deeply thankful that this medication changed your life and still be tired of managing your body. Both of these things can be true. Saying otherwise doesn't create motivation, it creates shame. There's also an identity shift no one really prepares you for. In the beginning, your role is clear. You're fixing something. You're in motion. You're becoming. But when things stabilize or slow down, that identity dissolves. You're not starting. You're not finishing. You're just living. And that space, without urgency, without crisis, can feel uncomfortable. Fatigue often rushes in to fill the silence where adrenaline used to live, not because we lost purpose, but because our nervous system is learning a new baseline. And then there's the outside world. People assume we're cured, that we don't need support anymore. that we should stop talking about it, that we should just live our life now. But living our life is the work. You still advocate for refills. You still navigate stigma. You still protect your peace in conversations that don't deserve access to it. Doing all of that quietly without validation is exhausting. Journey fatigue can be loneliness in disguise. Sometimes fatigue isn't even about the present. Sometimes it's grief finally having space. When your body stabilizes, emotions can catch up with us. Grief for lost time, grief for medical trauma, grief for the version of you that never got this support earlier. Healing doesn't erase the past, it makes room to feel it, and feelings take energy. Here's something else we need to be honest about. Maintenance is not exciting. It's repetitive, it's steady, it's boring. And in a culture addicted to transformation, boredom feels like failure. But steadiness is where health actually lives. Fatigue often comes from trying to make maintenance dramatic, when what it really needs is consistency. And I know you're thinking, well, I haven't hit my goal. So am I really in maintenance? I would argue that for most of us, a large portion of this journey, even during the active weight loss phase, when we hit a stall or a plateau, we're practicing for maintenance. We're practicing the habits that will keep us moving in the right direction long term. A lot of people hit a point where they think, I don't want to do this forever. That thought doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Forever is a heavy word. The long game isn't about committing to forever. It's about committing to this season again and again. That mental shift alone can soften the weight you're carrying. Long-term GLP-1 care is not about perfection. It's about sustainability. It's about systems that work when you're tired, structure that flexes when life gets messy, letting some things be good enough. This isn't the part where I give you 10 habits or a morning routine. What actually helps is quieter than that. Fewer decisions, not better ones. Systems that work on low energy days, letting seasons change without panicking, releasing the need to optimize constantly. It's learning the difference between support and control, structure and rigidity, awareness and obsession, and most importantly, giving yourself permission to rest from fixing it. You don't need to be motivated forever. If your system only works when you're motivated, it won't last. The goal isn't optimization or motivation, it's resilience. Over time, slowly, quietly, fatigue can give way to something else, a calm confidence. Not hype, not obsession, not urgency, just knowing. Knowing what your body needs, knowing what you won't tolerate anymore, knowing you don't owe anyone any explanations. That confidence doesn't come from weight loss. It comes from staying. You're also allowed to stop performing your health. You don't have to inspire anyone. You don't have to justify your choices. You don't have to make your healing legible to strangers. Your health is allowed to be ordinary, private, unremarkable. Quiet care is still care. So if you're listening to this and thinking, I did everything right, so why am I so tired? Here's the reframe I want to leave you with. You're tired because you stayed, because you adapted, because you chose long-term care over quick fixes. And that doesn't make it heavier, it makes it real. It's a practice, and practices are allowed to ebb and flow. If today feels heavy, that doesn't erase how far you've come. It just means you're human inside the long game, and that's okay. If this episode resonated, if it put words to something you've been carrying, I'd love it if you'd help me keep this conversation going. Follow the elevated dose wherever you're listening so you don't miss what's coming next because we're going deeper into what real support looks like after weight loss stops being the headline. And if you're able, leaving a review is one of the biggest ways you can support this show. It helps other people who are quietly struggling find this space and feel less alone. Share this episode with someone who did everything right and is still tired. This isn't a phase, it's the long game, and you don't have to play it alone. I'll see you next time.